What the flip is up with capitalism creating desperation? That's next on What the Flip. Welcome to What the Flip. I'm your host, Victor Vogel. Let me begin by saying I'm not against capitalism. Capitalism encourages innovation and offers opportunities for people to grow and improve their lives. However, unethical capitalism, capitalism that focuses on greed versus contribution, focuses on gaining at the expense of others versus capitalism that provides an opportunity for others, is destroying and dividing our country. There was a time in American history where ethical capitalism provided growth for owners and those who work for the company. A time when corporations actually built affordable housing for employees to work in positions who work less than desirable jobs like coal mining. A time when companies paid for health care for all employees, including lower paid employees and their families, to ensure the company had the employees they needed to grow and prosper. I worked in the human resource industry starting in the late 1970s. I consulted for nearly 35 years helping companies improve their culture and performance through their employees. During that time, I noticed a significant change in organizations' view of the people that work to help an organization become successful. It is hard to put my finger on what multitude of events and circumstances came about that created this change in how they viewed employees. But the one thing that underpinned all of the organizations that I consulted with was greed. In times where it was tough for organizations and they had to reduce costs, there was the need to evaluate people against financial growth. People lost, even though many of the company's mission statements indicated that people were their greatest asset. Companies began to shed benefits like housing and health care. They worked with insurance companies to reduce health care plans and reduced retirement contributions and reduced salary increases and ultimately laid people off. Companies paid consultants like me to help define these programs and often used us to deliver the views to people who had to leave their employment, often on short notice, tasks they didn't really want to undertake themselves. Certainly, it was understandable that if the company did not cut expenses, the company would fail and everyone possibly would lose their jobs. The companies provided severance packages. As this happened more and more, the packages became less and less. In fact, in my career, this happened to myself more than once. What this created was fear in employees and a reduction in employees' dedication to the company. Employees began to look out for themselves and gave up sacrificing for the company's success. Just since 2017, when a tax bill was passed, we see greed in action consistently today. Unethical capitalism is in plain view for everyone since the 2017 tax break to our current date. Now, the 2017 tax package was supposed to promote a more livable wage for the middle class. I remember seeing on television Republicans referencing a $1,000 bonus that would be sunk back into the local economy. It didn't happen. Companies didn't provide larger salary increases. They bought back their stock and enriched the owners and the stockholders. Unemployment did decrease, but the jobs taken by people were jobs paying as much as 50 to 75% less salaries than what they were making before. Yes, the average salary increased, but it increased on wages that were 75% less than the person used to make. It's not a real salary increase. As a consultant, I work closely with CEOs and board members. I watch many of them grow their salaries significantly at the expense of the employees. I watched employees laid off of their jobs and large bonuses paid to executives. I watched benefits like college tuition eliminated so stock prices would improve. I watched healthcare move from a company paying 100% of the healthcare cost to employees assuming over 50% of the cost. I watched employees turn down growth opportunities because healthcare would not transfer from one company to the other. And during this time, I watched even nonprofit universities' tuition grow exponentially. I saw people lose their homes during the recession and banks foreclose without blinking, putting people on the street regardless of the fact they just lost their job and their family was put on the street also. During these last few years, I saw rent increase exponentially for the same apartment, not out of necessity, but out of greed. I watch these rental companies put people on the street while offering new renters reductions to lure them into renting to maintain their occupancy. I once asked a rental company what they did to improve the property or apartment to justify the rent increase percentage while I was renting. They said their cost was going up, and I referred them back to the economic figures that said the economy was improving, and the percent of the growth in America was about 15% below what they were asking as a rental increase. Basically, they told me, if you don't like it, move. Unethical capitalism at work in my real-life experience. I moved. I got a new renter price and saved some money. Basically, you just need to be prepared to move every year until you run out of rentals. And then look for a single renter garage apartment. Not the ideal way to create a home environment. But that's unethical capitalism. This is unethical capitalism, really. This is why you cannot rely on healthcare, housing, education, or anything along these lines to remain tied to the capitalistic private sector. Today, companies and nonprofit left to their own operation will default to greed without concern for who they hurt. These three areas are necessities, not luxuries. They often decide life or death. To leave things like healthcare, housing, and education to those who opt for greed versus growth is to neglect the government's job description defined in the preamble to the Constitution. Let me just take a few seconds to read that preamble to you. Quote, "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity, those who will follow us, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America." That's the preamble. That is a government job description. The vast majority of decision makers in Congress, if not all of Congress, the executive branch, and the judicial system, earn above the middle class wages and enjoy benefits far in excess of the average citizens and certainly the poor. We are now seeing greed divide our country. We are seeing Republicans throwing the preamble to the Constitution into the fire to maintain their privileged position. Our president, undeniably, is increasing his personal wealth through his presidency. He hides behind supposed protections of the presidency never before used by any president in our past. And what's worse, he has staffed his executive branch with those who are loyal to him and not the people. To add injury to insult, all Republicans support his tyrannical hold on America as seen by their votes. Even those who publicly criticize the president vote against impeaching him and placing someone much more ethical and more experienced into the presidency. What has changed to turn our government upside down? Well, greed and unethical capitalism. It's about the power and greed they have come to enjoy at the expense of people. It's time for another change. The first change has made the country worse. It is time to learn from our mistakes and implement change that focuses less on unethical capitalism, but rather merges ethical capitalism and socialism. A government that cherishes and who will commit to the preamble of the Constitution. We know the Republicans will not go down this path. The only other party to vote for is the Democratic Party. We have seen 3 years, one of which was the total Republican-controlled government of Republican rule. What we have seen is divisiveness, loss of integrity, corruption, growth for the rich, attacks on health care, Social Security, less security in our country and the world, more gun violence in our schools, more teacher strikes, companies like General Motors who have asked their employees to make concessions during a time they took taxpayer money for a bailout and then forced the union to strike to get what they were promised during the time of the bailout. Employees stepped up to contribute. Then the company tried to take advantage during a time of record profits. This is pure greed. Enough of this. If you're in a middle-class earner category struggling to survive, in the poor income category, or if you're an immigrant or a person of color, or if you happen to be a woman, a senior citizen, or if you're a Christian who professes as Christ did to help the poor. In fact, if you are anyone except those who are in the upper income category and in control of companies or a congressional representative in upper levels of the White House and executive branch or federal judge, it is time for you to stand up and take back our country. Okay, here's what you must do. You have to rally everyone in this country, whether Democrat, Republican, Independent, or not partisan, and support those who will fight against unethical capitalism. This isn't a party issue. This is a status issue. It's clear from their votes, the Republican Congressional Caucus don't want to change our lives and regain our leadership role in the world. How do we take our government back? Our country has worked very well over the years with 2 or 3 parties. Parties aren't the problem. Unethical leadership who are corrupt and immoral are the problem. So here's a solution. If you're a Republican and you're suffering in the middle class and poor, and you're not seeing change for the last few years, it's time to wake your party up and tell your representatives to back Trump's impeachment. He is the one destroying the Republican Party. If you're a Democrat, you cannot sit back and not participate this year and next year. You have to back impeaching Trump. Then you need to turn out in force, and I mean force, to replace the House, Senate, and the presidency to the point where the House and Senate have veto override capability, whether a Democratic or Republican is elected to the presidency. If you're on the fence or uncertain, it's time to get off. It should be clear what is going on is corrupt and wrong. You need to swing over to the impeachment side and remove the president. You need to make clear to Republicans that you will swing Democrat if they don't vote to impeach and remove Trump. For those of you who are not always Trumpers, but always Republicans, you have to push to impeach and remove Trump. He's destroying your party and causing defections. It's time to take your party back. Push Republicans to vote to impeach and remove Trump now so he cannot damage your party anymore. Then vote all of those who were spineless and gave in to Trump's threat out of office. I'm guessing a large part of the 63 million who voted for Trump are not Trumpers, but Republicans. It is time for you to stand up and take your party back. For sure, in 2020, we need a turnout that exceeds 80% turnout of all registered voters of all parties, and a strong effort to register new voters, especially the youth of our country. It is their future that is at stake. This is What the Flip, and I'm your host, Victor Vogel. As always, all of my comments are my opinions and don't represent anyone else. Have a great day and terrific holidays.
You can like my Facebook page, What the Flip, and follow me, and stay tuned for more broadcasts of this podcast, What the Flip. Until then, have a great day.